Welcome. In today's video, I'm going to break down exactly how professional traders constantly adjust their strategy and optimize it, as well as how to build a strategy from start. So I'm going to break down exactly how I built my strategy over the past few months or even the past few years of how I develop my strategy and how I constantly adapt and make it better and better every day and every week. So I'm going to start on the daily chart. So what you want to do is every single day that price moves. So basically Monday through Friday, let's say Monday session, London and New York occur. And then at the end of the day, you need to go and do this process right here. This is the process of how you're going to figure out how price moves and how you're going to become very freaking knowledgeable about everything that price is doing. So for example, today we had this downtrend right on the daily. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Price is coming back into this daily level. And so I'm like, cool, let me go to the 4 hour. And again, this is how you can, one, learn from your mistakes, and two, how you can figure out how to read price action every single day and hone the skill, because trading is a skill and you have to learn to develop that. So the ability to read price action is something you have to develop, and that's what professional traders do. So what I saw was price was bearish, right? We're bearish here. And then I saw us go bullish. And so I thought, okay, cool. Price might want to continue higher, but again, the daily is bearish and we just tapped into a bearish order block. So I understand that we could go lower. And then the first thing I saw upon marking up or upon reflection was that we had this high get run. We wick the high and then we move to the downside very aggressively. So that gives me a sign that price wants to go lower, whether that means price wants to come into this order block here before we continue this 4 hour trend to the upside, or if the daily wants to take over because the higher time frame is more prevalent, and then this could just break through. So I'm thinking, okay, cool, no matter what, I want to look for shorts. Now in the moment, I wasn't looking at that. I was really caught up in the buys. I was really caught up in the fact that price was bullish on the 4 hour, and I failed to notice that we had just run this high as well as run this high. And so what you see is you have this movement up, back, down, and then this is like a big move. This is purging of liquidity, sweeping liquidity. So there's lots of stop losses above these highs. Every high there's liquidity. This is where there's stop losses. And I talk about that in other videos. And so yeah, so I'm like, okay, cool. Price purged above the high. I'm like, awesome. We purged above the high, so we should look for shorts in this area. And then price just never pulls back. And then I'm thinking, okay, cool. Now what could I look for? Well, on a 30-minute perspective, you could say, okay, price was bullish. And again, this is how you break down price action every single day. You look at what happened in hindsight. And a lot of people are like, well, it's hindsight trading, hindsight trading. Like, how do you think you develop a skill set? You look at things in hindsight. That's how you get better. So you're looking at, like, imagine a professional player looks at tape. Like a basketball player look at previous tape to see how they can improve and notice things. This is you looking at tape. So basically what I notice is things that happen, things that stand out, things that are obvious that I can notice tomorrow. And so if I keep doing that for weeks on weeks, eventually I will start to see patterns and I'll develop a strategy around that pattern, or I might find ways to optimize what I'm doing. And that means that you're always constantly evolving with the market. And therefore your strategy is never going to go out. Like, your strategy is never going to die off because you're always evolving with the market and the current pattern of the market. So anyways, yeah, I see price run to the downside. And again, this is 15-minute structure or 30-minute structure. And then I see this. So I'm thinking, okay, cool. Price could come back down here to go bullish and continue higher to come up into this zone and then go lower. Or we could just break, because again, the 4 hour is bullish, but also the daily is bearish. But obviously I see that didn't happen. So I'm like, okay, like, this is where hindsight helps. Well, we just broke this low, right? So how could I have known earlier in the day that price wanted to break this low? What were the signs? What could I see that could help me figure that out? So one of the things is, if you draw premium and discount, you can see price comes right back up into 50% equilibrium perfectly. And a lot of times when price wants to continue a bearish trend, it's going to come back to the 50% mark or deeper and then go down. So if you go to the 15-minute, it becomes a lot more apparent that price wants to go lower. How can you tell? What happens is we have this, right? And then price comes and purges the liquidity from this high, right? There's stop losses here. And then how do you know? Well, what you see is we wick it. And once we wick it, we then have a momentous move to the downside. So I'm like, okay, cool. Was there a way that I could look for sells somewhere in here once we purge the liquidity and start breaking down? Well, there are ways to look. So what you do is you drop to like maybe the 5 minute and you're like, okay, cool. Was there a way I could get in up here? Maybe, but it's kind of risky. It doesn't really make sense. There's no zones that really make sense. It's counter trend. I want to wait till we break. And so what I see is price does break this 15-minute/5 minute structure. So we get this break of the high. And again, what is this? This is like Wyckoff. I talked about this in another video. It's taking of liquidity, and then we have a high, and then we break down. So it's just, all it is like the exchange of weak hands to strong hands. And so what you see is on this 5 minute time frame, we get this minor break of structure right here, pull back and tap. So there could have been an entry in here. Personally, I wouldn't take this. So again, I'm not going to mark it up because it doesn't really make sense to me. Like it's just way too much hindsight. And so that's how you can apply hindsight without using it too far. Like obviously I know this works, but in hindsight, yeah, it works. But like in actuality, I would never take this because it's way too counter trend. And so you want to wait for confirmation. And so when I start looking at hindsight, I'm like, okay, cool. We broke structure here. Again, I was looking for buys down here, but again, this is where you can start looking. Oh, look, we have this tap in the zone and we go lower. So was there a way I could have taken a trade on this? Yes. We have price come down, test, boom. This is your formation of the LPS, last point of supply, and then we break down. So this is your next zone. If the 5 minute trend is to continue, it should not break this high. This high should be protected, and then we should continue down. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I could look for, sells in there. So what do I see? I see price come higher, and I'm like, okay, well, you could just enter straight off of this with a 6 pip stop. Personally, I wouldn't take a trade like this. That's not my style. I like to wait for extra confirmations. I like to see price come in here and then give me some kind of confirmation. But again, I could mark this and put this in my spreadsheet or whatever. And then if I start seeing that this happens multiple times every day, or multiple times a week or multiple times a month, then I might add this into my arsenal. But for now, I don't need to because it's not my style. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'd like to see price come up, come down, and then come back and give me an entry. Doesn't give me an entry. Okay, cool. That's how you learn from every day. Now, am I worried? Like maybe in the moment when I saw price run, I'm like, damn, I missed the trade. But that's how doing markups can help you stay confident in your strategy, because you're like, well, there was nothing there. Like there was no trade that was obvious that made sense without just like pure hindsight. So I'm like, cool. There was no trade there, so I'm not even worried about it. Like it doesn't even matter to me. I'm just like, okay, cool. Let's look lower. Was there another way to get in? And you start looking and you're like, okay, well, this is a good, a good zone. There's also like potentially the fact that price reacted off of here. So maybe you look for a sell in here, which originally I saw this. And I was looking for price to come back and give me this, but then we don't get that. And then price just kind of messes around the rest of the day. Nothing really clean in my eyes. I mean, you could look for this because technically this broke the high. So this is a new range. So you could take this, right? And this is what I'm saying, by learning to mark up, you could be like, okay, we have a momentum shift and MS, and then we have our zone. This is a supply and demand zone, causes a break of structure. Breaks right here, boom, pulls back, and then this causes the break of structure. So you're like, okay, this is my supply and demand zone. And you're like, okay, cool, I want to enter off 50%. So you could just enter straight off of this with a 3 pip stop, targeting the high. Why? Because if trend is continue, right? This is a short-term trend. I don't trade on the 1 minute like this, but you could. And this is how you identify it. You go, okay, the trend is bullish. If the trend is bullish, this low should be protected and this should be my target. So you're like, okay, cool. My target is this high. and you could target it for about 1 to 4.5. Or depending on your style, you could mark this up right into your spreadsheet, and you could also mark up, cool, I also sometimes maybe I want to look for a confirmation because it is counter trend, counter to the 15-minute trend. So this is pro trend, but you're counter to this trend. So you're like, okay, well, let me just wait for an extra confirmation. Let's wait for an MS, momentum shift. We get a fractal break of structure. Boom, you enter on this supply and demand zone. And this is how you wait for extra confirmation with your stop right below. And then again, targeting the high. And then what happens? You see, we get a break of structure 1, break of structure 2. I wait for 2 minor break of structures. So 1, 2, and then I go break even. So price comes back. We don't really get any partials, right? This is my first partial. And then we get taken out for break even. And that's that. And that's how you learn. Once you do this every single day, I promise you're going to start to see patterns, right? Like for me, I don't like to go counter trend that much unless it's a candle closure, just because I know from my own testing. But if I saw this occurring multiple times over a month, I'm like, and I start seeing this, I'm like, okay, cool. As long as I wait for confirmation, it's more confirmed, because the other days, if it's not confirmed, it just breaks through, right? You got to determine a proper strike rate. Like let's say 50% of the time this works and it goes for a 1 to 5, then it's worth taking. And so that's what you identify. And that's what professional traders do, is they build a playbook. They identify specific setups through looking at the market in hindsight. And what happens is they maybe mark this trade up and this trade up, and they put it into a spreadsheet, or not a spreadsheet, but like Notion or Evernote or whatever you want to use. And you label them. So this one could be called like 1 minute break of structure, pull back to the edge supply and demand with a momentum shift. So a momentum shift confirmation, maybe you would label it that. And every day that you see a 1 minute break of structure, a price pull back to the edge, right? The origin of the move, what caused this to break, the origin here. And you say, okay, cool, I'm gonna wait. And every time I see that, I'm gonna mark it up and I'm gonna see what happened. Win, loss, or break even, it doesn't matter. You mark all of them. And what happens is you start to identify these things, and over time you start to build a skill. You start to understand what works and what doesn't work. And once you've done that for a few weeks, that is a lot better than back testing bar replay. Because how do you know what you're looking for? You need to identify a specific strategy that has an edge. Once you identify a strategy that has an edge, then you can take that strategy to go and back test using bar replay, because the point of bar replay back testing is to build confidence in your strategy and to prove you have an edge. It's not to develop a strategy. This is how you develop a strategy, and this is how professional traders do it. They look at what happened today, what happened yesterday, what happened last week, what happened over the past month, what are the obvious trades that are going on, how can I learn from that, and how can I grow every single day to become better? How can I optimize? As well as if you take trades, like let's say I entered this or something, how can I optimize my risk to reward? How can I become better? What can I do to optimize the amount that I'm winning? How can I change my management? Because let's say I didn't go break even on this. How would I change the management to make it so that I do go break even? So let's say maybe I don't go break even until we break here. Well, that's a loss. So maybe I put in my notes, well, okay, let's go break even once we have another break of structure. Then I go break even, and then boom, now you just made a rule that saves you percentage. It's all about finding rules and things that over time you can figure out by doing this. It's called like hindsight observation or doing markups. Like that's basically how you end of day markups. That's how you learn and grow every single day. So hopefully this video helps. If you have any questions about anything, drop them below and I'll be glad to answer them. If not, I will see you in the next video. Peace.